I think we shouldn't underplay the Finn Russell influence. I mean, when he signed, I put my hand up. I didn't think it was going to work. Certainly not in the first year.
Nor did I.
I thought that there'd be no pre-season training with the club. He'd be away with Scotland. He'd come back from the World Cup either knackered, battered up, disillusioned, or whatever. And I thought this is going to take time. We might see a few results at the end of the season, teeing up next season. He's arrived running, up and running. He's thrown his hat into the ring. He didn't miss a match that he didn't have to miss. He really put his body on the line, and he was just the catalyst. And I think he gave the crowd hope. And once you get that Bath crowd going, they're a fantastic home support. And he was the catalyst for all those other exceptionally good players who are all coming through. So I was definitely wrong. He's been a magnificent signing. If you're going to have a marquee signing, make it a Finn Russell signing. He's been superb.
You always know, Bren, when Bath are playing well when the crowd throw their hummus in the air.
I tell you what, I love what Finn's done as well. He's given Ben Spencer, he's relieved a bit of pressure off Ben Spencer, and Ben Spencer has looked absolutely fabulous this season. But I tell you, the relationship that surprised me with Finn Russell is Finn Russell and Johan van Graan, because from what I'd heard about Munster, I just wasn't sure how that was going to work. Not peas in a pod by any means, right? Very, very different characters. They like to do things very, very differently. And, things weren't brilliant at Munster, let's be honest, in the last couple of years of Johan. My word, that has just blossomed, hasn't it? And we should mention the third party who gets no credit is JP Ferreira, who they loved in Munster. The hard lads in Munster thought he was fantastic and he gave them a real hard edge. That whole relationship, wow, phenomenal.
Well, Russell half paid his way last weekend, but he kicked his goals.
Yeah.
And they weren't easy. They weren't easy. And that, you wouldn't always ordinarily back Russell to kick everything in sight.
Just before we move on from the Finn Smith, Finn Russell completely, obviously they're similar-ish players in a way, and if you were to make parallels between Finn Russell and one of the 10s in the Gallagher Premiership, it will probably be Marcus or Finn in terms of the box of tricks that they have available to them. But Finn Russell, say he has a bad day tomorrow, his credentials are still very much, his stock is incredibly high. Finn Smith's stock is constantly rising. You'd make a case for him starting a test or two this summer for England. Some people are even saying tomorrow is a Lions test shootout. Obviously, Jack Crowley would have something to say about that. Marcus Smith might have something to say about that. Craig, what do you make of, obviously very exciting to see him, but just how big a day is it in his career and his season and the implications it can then have internationally and beyond?
In Finn Smith's?
In Finn Smith's, yeah.
The door's open, isn't it? So you got to remember that. The door's open completely when it comes to the England team. Are we agreed on that? No one's got their mind made up there. And he's in a position to walk through it. And he can't think about that. He can't think about that.
I'd say that George Ford, for me, if you said who's going to be starting against New Zealand in Dunedin that first test, George Ford will be starting. I don't think Borthwick, will tear up the script almost whatever happens tomorrow. But I also think that the idea that either of them will lose any sort of kudos from this season, because they've both performed magnificently for both their clubs this season, that whoever ends up on the losing side isn't going to suddenly, plummet out of any reckoning.
No.
Do you even think if Mitchell starts at 9 for England, and if Smith plays out of his skin in front of 52,000 people against one of the most celebrated 10s in the world game at the moment, you don't think that does the job for him?
I'd give him pause for thought.
But this is what I'm saying. I'm not saying he'll lose stock, but currently Finn Smith is not England's starting 10.
Well, the only time we've seen him under real pressure, when he looked as though he was crackable, was in that Champions Cup semi-final.
But then he cooked.
And actually, they pulled through it and got themselves back in the game. But he had a rough 20 minutes or so.
But his 9 had a bad day.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting great service that day, was he?
Yeah.
No. His 9 at Leinster were good.
He was getting nailed by the Leinster back row.
Well, indeed. But, that happens to 10s, doesn't it? In the very big games, that can happen. And it's how you adapt. And actually, over time, he rediscovered his bearings.
And actually, just a little note on Finn Smith and that. He's a tough boy. He's one of the biggest tackling tens I've seen in a long while, English tens anyway. And he seems to absorb all the sort of traffic as well. So he's not just a quality class player, but he's a very tough lad, I think. And I think we'll increasingly see that as he goes up the ladder. I don't think he's intimidated physically by anything.
And that's, again, that Saints coaching panel, they've made them all love tackling. They all love it. They love smashing guys.